Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina from Core Connection. And this week we are going to get into finding joy beyond the scroll. And before we do that, I have this week's parenting moment, which is pertinent to what we have been talking about. So our focus has been dopamine lately. And one of my big dopamine hits is cycling. I love cycling, okay? And anticipating a ride and going, like the idea of going on that ride, I just love it. And sometimes I get the mom guilt going on. So when I have spare time, I will more often than not use it to cycle. And sometimes I will even plan my day or even try to prioritize rides where I can because it's good for me. It's good for my mental health. It's obviously good for my physical health. And it just brings me so much joy. Cycling is really something that I do for me. And, I'm trying to work on the mom guilt. I mean, parents, I feel like we carry guilt about something. And so something that I've been trying to work on is not feeling guilty because I've prioritized a ride. I've prioritized 1 hour a day for me to do something. And as we've said previously, dopamine is not the enemy. And you know what? My dopamine, my happiness also matters too. So that is my parenting moment. Parents, if something is giving you the hit of dopamine and it's good for you and it's something you enjoy, try not to feel guilty for prioritizing yourself. I know that's easier said than done. I want to acknowledge that, but you matter too. Your happiness matters too.
Yeah, I love that you shared that, Liz. And I think at a deeper level than your happiness and the dopamine is that you're going to show up as a better mom if you are caring for yourself. And we see this often, right? Moms and dads, they will sacrifice everything under the sun for their children. And that's a wonderful quality to have until that quality means that you are no longer functioning. And when we talk so much on this podcast about modeling, what are we modeling for our children if we literally sacrifice our own health or well-being so that we don't have to feel guilty because, I did this instead of spent time with my kids that day? There's got to be a balance in there. And yes, our kids are important and they should be a very top priority for us. But we're nothing if we don't have the capacity to help them because we didn't take care of ourselves.
Yeah, you're definitely going to have more to give if you're taking care of yourself. We think of that analogy in the airplane when you have to put on your oxygen mask first and then on to the youngers that need help. You're not able to help others if you aren't taking care of first.
And you are going to sacrifice for your kids. You've already sacrificed your kids and you're going to continue to because it's just part of having kids. But it's okay to put yourself first sometimes. Well, like we said, you need to put yourself first sometimes. And, I'm hoping that my kids grow up and understand how important it is to exercise and to take care of your body is another thing that I would like for them to experience, right? To find joy in something that you love, in working hard, in being dedicated. That's another piece that I am modeling. So that brings us into a good way to recap kind of what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. Oftentimes, parents and teens and young kids, they may not know how to label it, but oftentimes parents might look at teens and feel frustrated because they don't want to do anything besides sit in front of a screen. And it's kind of like, why doesn't anything else seem fun? Because they're used to that fast pace, go, go, go. It's all different. It's all novelty. Our brains love novelty. And so, we get those dopamine hits. And so we always want more. So what we are going to get into today is how we can help them kind of overcome that, right? So we're going to start with why teens often give up too quickly. Okay. When something gets hard, it feels like they're just not trying because it's hard. So where does this come from? Explain, why it can feel this way for teens.
Well, I think it's exactly what we've been talking about for several weeks now. They're giving up because we live in this world of instant gratification and instant success. I play the game, I get the reward. I post the social media post and I get the likes. Like, it's super instant. Now let's look at, for example, maybe your kid's running track, right? And they have got a little ways to go to start moving up in the ranks to score well or to move closer towards those top positions, right? And it takes work and it takes time and it takes effort and it takes energy. And so really what we're talking about here is that we want to start to understand the difference between being entertained, which is what we're really talking about, right? These quick dopamine hits, the scrolling on social media, the hours in front of the phone, the short videos, whatever it is, that's entertainment. But we want to teach our children how to be fulfilled. And that's a really big difference from being entertained. And to be fulfilled, like you're talking about cycling, Liz, like you're fulfilled like when you complete a race. Maybe you don't even do that well in the race, but if you complete it, that's kind of a big deal. And you're fulfilled when you see your heart strengthened and your body change because you're taking care of it, right? That's fulfilling. And it's going to be the same thing with our kids. Like what is fulfilling for them? Maybe they learn to play the violin, or maybe they learn a new sport and they're successful with that, or maybe they accomplish a really big hike that they've been wanting to accomplish. Whatever it is, like we're looking at bringing fulfillment for them and helping them to understand what it's like to be fulfilled and not just entertained. And there's nothing wrong with being entertained. We all want to be entertained at some level, but we need more than entertainment. Entertainment doesn't fulfill us.
Isn't that interesting? Because I don't know how many people probably experience this, that their kids could spend hours on video games and then they get off and they're like, I'm bored. So there really is no fulfillment in that activity, right? There's just pure entertainment, because entertainment is fast, easy, immediate. It requires little effort. Whereas fulfillment is slower and requires effort, takes time to develop it. Fulfillment creates lasting satisfaction.
And so I also want to just kind of reiterate what Jeremiah said a little bit about it's not a bad thing to be entertained. And so one of the things that we've tried to stress is we don't want to make technology the issue. We don't want to make, spending 10, 15 minutes scrolling on Facebook Reels or doing anything that provides that instant gratification or that provides that dopamine. We're not trying to just completely eliminate it and cut it out, because that's not going to be helpful and it may not even be sustainable, right? So, what we're aiming for is balance. We want both. It's okay to sit and get those quick dopamine hits, play the video game for an hour. That's fine. But it doesn't need to be all you do, right? You want things that are going to be worthwhile in the long run, is really what we're aiming for here. So one thing that you can do, or one area where you can start with, is maybe leading with curiosity, right? So avoid forcing passions. Okay. We've talked about this before. If your kid doesn't like sports, don't force them to do sports. Okay. If they pick up a hobby and they hate it and they tried it, don't make them stick with it just because they started it. Okay. And I'm not talking about like midway through a sports season. Oh, I don't like this, I'm no good at it, and you just let them drop out. That's a little bit different. But like, I don't know, let's say they try to pick up crocheting. Okay, I've got a couple of kiddos who are trying to do that, and they kind of get into it and they try it out and then they absolutely hate it and it's just not fun for them. Okay, that's fine. Let them back out, let them give up crocheting or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, right? But start with curiosity. Ask them what interests them. What do they naturally talk about, right? So we're trying to get curious with our teens here.
Yeah, and exploring those things, and the reality is, you're probably going to get a lot of, like, if you ask, well, what are you interested in? I don't know, video games, or like you're going to get silly answers in a lot of those cases. But it's an opportunity for you to understand and explore what you already know about your teen, because you know some things. What do they talk about? And we can make some of those shifts, right? Really, what we're doing here is we want them to learn how to stay engaged long enough to gain experience with deeper rewards. And a great example of this is we have in our home had all of our children be involved in music in some way in their lives. Most of them piano lessons. A lot of them have gone on to do different things, singing. They've played violin. We have one playing the violin now. They've played drums, different things surrounding music. And I remember, and I think we've probably mentioned this before on this podcast, but our oldest two children wanted to quit. And we used to tell them, like, if you can find somebody who quit playing piano and didn't regret it, we'll let you quit. And they never can, because it doesn't exist. And yet, the rewards that come from that take years. And if any of you have had kids that have played instruments in school, right? Those early junior high band concerts, oh, they can be tough, right? They're not great. And then we had one of our children graduate, this year, and went to her choir concert, and the singing before the graduation, it was just beautiful. It was really, really amazing and wonderful. And there's a lot of great experiences there that have brought rewards and relationships. Same thing with our son, who played percussion and played the drums throughout junior high and high school, and going and listening to him play was deeply rewarding for us as parents, and rewarding for him. And he still enjoys playing, and we'll come home to him pounding on the drums, and it's quite loud, and yet it's really rewarding and enjoyable. These things take time and experience, and the rewards are deeper. And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about being fulfilled. And so, Liz, talking about being curious, kids are going to talk about what they enjoy. I have a son that loves video games. And so, often it seems like probably on this podcast, we're fighting that desire. But with him, we've explored things like coding, which coding probably isn't that big of a deal anymore. With AI, it can do all your coding for you. And it's probably going to be something that's going to go by the wayside. But, along with video games, there are things like storytelling, or even game design, or digital art, or there's just so much that we can explore with them that go right along with their interests. And now we're not having this battle of, like, I hate your video games, get off of them. But, like, what are you growing from, and what are you doing with that? What can we explore together? And that can be very rewarding over time and exciting for them. And it helps build the connection between mom and dad and child.
It also makes me think back to an episode we did semi-recently of loving the teen you have. If you have a teen who loves video games, that's who they are. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? And so we don't want to fight that. And so, yeah, like, there's so many other areas that we can explore. I don't think I've ever heard of a teen who, when they ask what their hobby is or what they like to do, is scrolling on Instagram or Facebook. I've never really heard a teen say this. Now, if somebody likes posting videos about something, or, if they do enjoy the social aspects of social media, maybe they are trying to build a following, and as long as they're not doing anything dangerous or unsafe, again, don't try to fight that. Don't try to say, no, you can't do that. That's a waste of time. And you're never going to get true fulfillment out of that. It's more about, like we said, that balance piece. So, love your teen for who they are and get interested in their hobby with them. Ask them questions about it and ask them what they think. Even if it's something as simple of, I noticed you spend a lot of time on social media. You're spending a lot of time making these videos. How do you feel about doing that? Do you feel like maybe you're spending too much time, or is this causing distress for you in some other areas, or are you neglecting other things? Right? So don't fight it, but rather help them manage it, if that makes sense.
And I think that's such great opportunities for you to think beyond your story or expectation of them. Because, hey, there's video game competitions. Like, kids can win stuff and win prizes and win titles. And, there's good that comes with that, with them being able to, they could do cybersecurity or things like that. So directing that talent and that hobby and that interest in ways that can benefit them. And also, like you were saying, social media, people posting, there's so much creativity and marketing and things that they can learn with having that talent or interest with social media that open up our opportunities for them. So finding that balance of helping them to be able to use those skills to help them in the future.
Okay, so what can we do to help teens discover that purpose, right? Because it doesn't happen all at once. You're not going to get a teen who just all of a sudden finds this one thing they're passionate about and they do that for the rest of their life. How do we help them find something?
Well, and I think that's kind of where we're just talking about, that quitting everything comes into play. So give them opportunities to try different things, find people that they enjoy being around, and that might come with quitting and trying different things. So maybe it is okay that they're trying things and quitting things.
Yeah, we discover our purposes through a variety of ways, right? Sometimes we discover our purposes in life through relationships or experiences, through challenges. Some of the reason why Selina and I both work in mental health is because of our experiences. When I was a teenager, there is not a snowball's chance in Hades I would have thought I would ever become a counselor and work in that field. But sometimes it's the challenges that we experience that help us discover our purpose, and that'll be the same for our teens. Sometimes it's through service. Sometimes and a lot of times it's through exploration, right? And if your kid is into video games and it's a really big deal, there's all kinds of things that they could go to and be involved in. You could take them to, there's conferences and there's webinars and there's all kinds of things developed around that they could explore. We've talked about our son who's really into science right now and chemicals and how they react and respond to each other. We're exploring that with him and allowing him to explore that. So those explorations will help them develop their purpose and discover and understand what that is.
I had a thought as we were talking about, maybe it's not a bad thing that they were quitting things. What if we reframed it instead of, oh, they're quitting things, they're moving on. They're trying something new. They're learning. So rather than calling it, oh, they quit this hobby again, they learned they didn't like that hobby, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, like we talked about earlier, like let's get curious about it. Like, what is hard for you, or what is no longer interesting to you about this? What's changed for you? Because sometimes, maybe if we're playing a sport and they all of a sudden quit, maybe there's something going on in practice that isn't healthy, and we want to understand that. But I do like that idea, Liz, of maybe they're just moving on and they're exploring the next thing.
Okay, so to kind of conclude here, I guess parents, don't panic when a teen appears disengaged at times. It's okay. It's normal for them to maybe just go through slumps. Maybe they are just bored with the sport and they don't want to do it anymore. Maybe they are just bored with the hobby and they're just not that interested. And maybe there's this little kind of slump in between where they're trying to find something new. I think we've all experienced that even as adults. I think of when I finish a really good book series, I'm like, well, now what do I do? Now I got to go find another book series. Okay. So we experience the same thing as adults. So don't panic when they disengage, right? We don't need to start lecturing or comparing or trying to force them into something else. So what can we do?
Well, it's an opportunity to connect when they're disengaged, right? And those curiosity questions create connection. Lecturing will ruin it. Comparing will ruin it. I think about comparing a lot. We do that as parents and we do it with our children. It's dangerous. I remember, and I may have shared this on the podcast before. I remember as a teenager, my parents started comparing me to my little brother, or comparing my brother to me. And it created a lot of tension between us, and it was really unhealthy. And I was going a different direction in life than he was going, and my parents liked the direction more that I was going than he was going. Anyway, it just created a lot of tension between us. It was awful. And my parents, I mean, they meant well. I don't mean to put any bad taste in anyone's mouth about my parents. They were wonderful, but it didn't help with the connection. And so the focus really needs to be on the connecting, the encouraging, and then helping them explore, giving them the opportunity to explore things that they're interested in. And this is going to take work. Like you all know, most of your teenager responses are short and not very sweet. So, be patient with the process and ask the right questions. Ask the questions like, what do you want to build? What kind of life do you want to build someday? And what do you think that looks like? And what do you think you might need to do to go that direction? And then just keep exploring those things with them. It's actually a lot of fun. I enjoy doing that with my kids.
Well, connecting with them is, asking questions, being curious, not lecturing and telling them. So asking questions, trying to understand, trying to see where they're at and where they're coming from and what they're learning. And so a question like, what kind of life do you hope to build for yourself someday, is going to give you insight as to where they are and where to direct them or where to help them with these interests that they could be spending time on.
And if your teen comes back at you with, I don't know, that's okay too. They've got time to figure it out.
No, your response is, if you did know, what would it be?
I like that one. Yeah. So, again, the goal isn't to eliminate the screens, right? The goal is not to eliminate all of the instant gratification. The goal is to help them find the balance, right? The goal is to create a life that feels rich enough that screens aren't the only source of enjoyment. We all want our teen to have a well-rounded life, okay? And technology, screens, reels, shorts, video games, it's a part of it, and you can't change that. So instead, focus on what you can control. And what you can control is how you interact with your teens surrounding those things, right? So are you going to be the parent that just bashes screens all the time? Or are you going to be the parent that encourages alternatives? All right. Final takeaways.
I think for me today, the final takeaway is for parents to ask themselves a few different questions. One of those is, what genuinely excites my teen? I need to understand that. I need to know what excites them. Next would be, where do I see signs of curiosity? So we need to know our teen. Like, what are they curious about? And then maybe the last question to ask yourself might be something like, am I focusing more on controlling screens or helping my child to build the meaningful life that they want to build? And that's a really big question. And if you're struggling with those questions or struggling to understand, reach out to us. We'd love to have a chat with you and see if we can explore that a little bit more with you.
All righty. So next week, we are going to get into the instant gratification trap, and we will see you all then. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.